Happy Tuesday! My name is Alan.
And my name's Nick.
And welcome into the dungeon.
So here we are, at the very end of our maiden campaign, The Dragon of Icespire Peak. This is our reflection episode. Those of you who listened to episode 0 will know that this was what we had set out to do from the very start. We said that at the end of each campaign we would do a reflection of our favourite moments of the campaign, and we'll be following this up with a review episode as well. We'll talk about what we liked about the campaign, what we didn't like, what we had to tweak to make it playable as a duet.
On today's episode, we'll be going over our thoughts and feelings on the adventure from both the perspective of the DM and the player, which is me.
That it is.
We'll talk about what we liked, what we didn't like.
This is a bit of a taster as well, in a way, for those of you who are considering joining our Buy Me a Coffee, because we usually do little reflection episodes at the end of each session, and this is a mega reflection of the campaign at large. Before we get going with the actual highlights of the campaign, you know, when we started off into the dungeon and this first maiden campaign, the aim behind this had been to share our experiences with you and hope to entertain you and bring you along with us on our journey through the adventure itself, hopefully inspiring you to, run your own duet games and show that you can play a fully fledged campaign with just 2 people. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of the campaign itself, I think it's safe to say we actually managed to achieve it, or at least I feel like we did that.
Yes, and we have got some feedback from listeners saying that they never thought of playing a campaign this way as a duet, and they hadn't played D&D before because they couldn't find the numbers, and they had decided after hearing us to give it a go. So that's encouraging and pretty much mission accomplished.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think that we've missed out on anything because there's been less people. I think the way that we set up the campaign, by having those companions which were introduced into the game system with the Dragon of Icespire Peak, but building upon them, we, if you listen to this, the chances are you've listened to the preceding 84 episodes, or at least some of them. The way we did it was I would role play the characters, so Al would always have companions to bounce ideas off, to give him their own ideas, and always in a way that I didn't try to overshadow Shrew as the main character or try to lead him down a certain path. So I kind of played Fenner and Fabian in particular, especially before Mulkup was there, as always offering 2 different approaches, 2 different personalities. But then in battle, as you know, Al was controlling them as well, so it sort of balanced out the workload in terms of, the action economy and keeping tabs of everything that's going on. But I think it provided for a really rich roleplay experience and really helped drive a narrative with just 2 people.
Not only that, it helped to manage the action economy when I controlled the NPCs in battle, but it also kept things interesting for the player. Because if you had been controlling the NPCs or the other shrubberies during battles, I'd just have 1 turn during the whole battles. You'd be moving all the monsters, all the other NPCs. So by allowing me to play the characters, the NPCs during battles, it got me more involved. And I could strategize easier because I knew what everyone was going to do, in a way.
Yeah, that definitely helps keep you more engaged at the table as well, so less time to check your phone whilst things are going on or get distracted.
Having said that, even though I always had the strategy in mind because I controlled all the NPCs, so I knew what everyone was doing. I tried not to cheat. I mean, it's probably not the best term to use, but like in the last fight with the dragon, where Fenna got fed up and left the safety of her hiding place where she was trying to fire the ballista at the dragon, she left because she couldn't see the dragon. But the dragon was almost in line with her vision at that point. So for me as Alan, I could have just said I'll hold on here for a while. But as Fenna, it was clear that she was getting frustrated, so she had to move. So I tried not to metagame in a way where I knew what every character was doing, and that was the best approach to it. I tried to still keep it kind of in roleplay and in character.
And the other aim that we set out to make as well with this maiden campaign was to play more in D&D. Because we did mention that as people's lives become busy as we grow up, it becomes increasingly difficult to schedule around our busy lives, work, family. In our case, we're both active musicians as well, so band practices, live gigs. It gets really hard to get 4 more people around the table regularly. Yet, in the space of, maybe 18 months or so from when we started recording and then we went live and to where we are today, we've managed to play a grand total of 84 weeks out of that period, so...
Yeah, it's safe to say that we have been playing much more D&D than we used to. Again, part of the mission, like Nick said, so mission successful.
That's 2 for 2.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, getting on to the actual reflection parts of the campaign itself. Looking back at that first episode, and I think we've discussed this before in the Into the Studio episodes, but for the benefit of this campaign, it started off with quite the bang, didn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, considering it was our first episode and we were both like 2 freshly born chicks straight out of the egg, we were nervous and all, and suddenly you present me in that situation. A dragon suddenly attacks me. I knew that the dragon was in the campaign. I didn't know it was gonna make an appearance so early, so it was quite exhilarating and nerve-wracking at the same time, because I thought that's literally, I think I was screaming out, I'm gonna die on my first campaign or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, you gave a reminder to the listeners that you were level 1. So as you're sort of driving towards Phandalin and it's now within sight, again you sort of see the 2 horses getting more and more on edge. And you sort of start to see like a cloud coming above you.
Sugar. So it's an unnatural shaped cloud? Is it the shape of a dragon?
So the horses really start to get on edge and they start bolting.
What?
And Vincent's like, "Or Betsy! Or
Betsy, get us out of here!"
And as you sort of look up, you see a widespread wingspan of a ferocious beast high above you.
Just to make a point here so that the listeners... I'm level 1, by the way. I shouldn't be fighting a dragon, so I don't know what's going on. But okay. I remember fretting for my life there, and I thought, we were aiming for like a 10-episode campaign, and it could have been a 1-episode campaign.
Yeah, I suppose the dice rolls at the beginning of the campaign weren't as terrible as they got like midway through to almost the end.
Yeah, but I suppose that was more of a like, here I am, the big bad boss. Here I am, and see you later kind of thing. I don't think it would, unless I would have done something crazy like try and ride it or something, which I was about to do, let's be honest. But no.
But yeah, it depended on the dice rolls as well, because at one point the dragon was starting to lift Betsy and the cart along with it, and you took that decision to grab Vincent's hunting knife and set Betsy free.
I grabbed the knife. Betsy! Buttercup! And I say goodbye. I cut. Can I see like a rope attached to the...
Yeah, you can see where she's attached.
So I cut the rope from the cart.
As you do that, the cart sort of bolts back down again.
I couldn't do more to save you.
And you see this dragon circling off into the sky.
You should have... Oh, what a terrible, terrible decision. That has haunted me throughout the whole campaign. And now I have Betsy in a bag of holding.
But quite nice how the episode itself, or rather the campaign itself, started with you and Vincent and finding that knife, and then right at the end of the campaign it was said knife that got you your dragon scale, and we ended the campaign with that callback to the music that was playing in that episode 1, and with good old Vincent calling out to you from his cart.
Yes, poetic.
So yeah, reflecting back now on the campaign itself, what was your favorite moment?
Well, to be honest, there's a lot of favorite moments. A lot of them. That's the obvious answer. But if I had to pick one, quite honestly, probably those first episodes. I mean, it's hard because I've loved every single episode and every single minute we've played, but those first episodes where we weren't really sure of what we were doing, me especially as a player, I was testing the waters, coming to grips with my character, with Shrew, trying to figure out what he would act like and react like, and really creating his character as we played, really, because it's one thing to write his backstory and kind of have an idea of his character, right? But it's another totally different thing to actually start playing him and discovering the character as it interacts with other NPCs and characters in the world. So I think those first episodes where I met Harbing, I grabbed his fingers.
I believe it was 25 gold for this quest.
25 gold only?
Okay, put out your hands.
That's not enough for a potion.
Well, I didn't say you would get a potion.
Put out my hands.
And he starts putting 1 gold piece out at a time.
I grab his finger. Can I grab his finger? That's deflating.
Yeah, I'll say you grab the
finger.
I'm grabbing on tight to stop him from...
Yeah, holding on.
The command! Talking about starting a new campaign with the pressure of mics and recording and everything, and that was just like a curveball episode 1.
Yeah, like I don't know what Harbing was supposed to be doing, or like I don't know if I interacted with him more than I should have. I don't know. That's why I enjoyed those episodes, because we didn't know. We didn't know what we were doing, how far we were going to push roleplay. We didn't know any of that. And it's ended up being what it's ended up being. But that's where we started figuring it out. And
yeah.
I fondly remember those episodes.
I mean, it definitely became a lot more narrative, a lot more descriptive. I think we were role-playing from the beginning, but we certainly got into a lot more roleplay itself, even by our standards. I mean, particularly towards the end of the campaign. There were moments where we would catch ourselves like full-blown acting and reaching over the table and throwing our arms up in the air and really getting into the characters we were playing.
For sure. What about your favourite moment?
Like you, I've had loads, but I think if I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say 2 favourite moments, because really you've cheated as well. You've talked about the early episodes rather than a specific moment.
Yeah,
so
true.
I'm going to flag 2 moments. The first of my favourite moments was when Zelene threw Donjon's head down at you. You get into the entrance of this cave and you see a silhouette standing at the entrance. Coming from it, you see this motion of an arm tossing something, and you hear like a thump, thump. It starts rolling towards you. You're wearing your night vision goggles, your owl-like goggles of the night, so you can see in the dark. To your shock, you see that this is Donjon's head.
What? She. Damn you.
I remember preparing that episode and thinking, Zelene's just going to show off that she's killed Donjon. And I remember as I was narrating the little description that I'd prepared, this thought just popped into my head of, actually she's going to have beheaded him and she's going to roll his head down this, this ramp from the cave's entrance. And I remember building up to it and thinking, no, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. But how cool would it be? And then it was like, yeah,
you did.
I'm doing it. And then I thought, okay, now we've gone into full-blown narrative, story-driven shock moments, almost like AMC or, like AMC's The Walking Dead. I was picturing in my head, like, if this was like a humongous, massive hit show. And for me, that was like a really cinematic moment, particularly as we ended it on that mega cliffhanger as well. My second favorite moment is in part linked to that arc with like Amphitrite and Mountain Toes Mine, and it was when you made your way back to the Stone Hill Inn with Toblum, and you bumped into your friends, good old Dazzler and Norbus, and you sort of I can't remember if you approached them or they approached you, and they were a bit irate that you'd gone up to the mines and left them and hadn't told them where you were going, and you sort of pulled them in close and you were like, I've got to tell you something, they're were-rats. And Norbus was just like, were-rats! And it was just like a spur of the moment thing, and I just remember like bursting into laughter. And again, it was that same sort of time where we started like actually not just role-playing but full-blown acting. I remember like acting all shocked, and I think that really helped project the surprise of Norbus and Dazzler when they heard that there were were-rats in the region.
Yeah, I remember telling them to not be loud or something, or I told them they didn't come because they were too loud. It was something like that, and that was their reactions. Yeah, so it was pretty good. We've been... Don't say anything. You guys find it hard to keep your voices down.
Oh, I do not agree with that.
Shh. We have been bitten by were-rats.
Were-rats?
No, I told you to keep your voice down.
Here in Vandalen.
No, just shut up, drop it. It's okay.
But yeah, there's been loads and loads of moments. A lot of them, I think, involving Dazzler and Norbus. They were almost like the comic relief of the campaign itself. Some of the fights as well, but I mean, we'll get into our favourite fights in general. Some of your interactions with Harbin as well had me in fits of laughter.
Yeah, I also enjoyed the interactions between Fabian and Shrew.
Yeah, that relationship really grew and developed, didn't it?
Yeah, it was kind of a... I don't know, it was a weird kind of relationship, where a bit of a give and take relationship, where mostly Shrew was giving and Fabian was taking, in the sense that Shrew was given stick and Fabian was taking it.
Thanks for clarifying that up.
Yeah, because even though like Shrew would have been, like, I think it was in the last episode, the last one we just played, the ending episode, the epilogue, when Fenna is saying goodbye and Shrew is kind of not taking it too seriously and kind of throws Fabian under the bus for a second when Fenna asks for the Stone of Sending, and Shrew says, yeah, I'll give it to you, but we're going to be calling you every time Fabian mucks up.
Oh yeah.
So like moments later Fabian tries to return the jab and says something about a big head of we're gonna miss her because Shrew has a big head, or his big head, or his stubbornness, or something. I didn't even let the guy finish. We're trying to be serious here. Moments before I had been like taking the piss. Like, you always have to spoil the serious moments. Come on, or something like that. And it was like it was always like that, you know. Like, I wouldn't let the guy have a break.
Yeah, I think it really grew into that relationship for me. I think the turning point was when you had triggered that trap in the Dragon Burrow and the tunnel had collapsed and you managed to escape.
Oh, yeah.
And then you found Betsy 2.0, the skeletal steed. And you, for some reason, which I still can't understand, you decided to climb inside it and call for help.
It was funny. It was supposed to be a prank. A funny prank.
And then he, like, I think you rolled and you crit hit the horse and smashed it to smithereens.
Yeah. I imagine this horse, obviously being bones, has a large rib cage. I want to try and crawl into the rib cage. Like if it's eaten me.
You're holding onto the rib cage, or rather the ribs of the skeletal horse, just as Fabian and Fenna burst into the room. Shrew! Oh my god, Shrew!
Stay back! Stay back! It will eat you too!
You see Fabian
Don't!
running with his sword
Put
directly at...
Put it down! It will eat you too! I just found my horse. Don't kill it! Damn you! Fabian, can't take a joke.
It hits. 10 damage as his sword slices through the bones of right at the neck where the head sort of meets the shoulders, that part of the neck there. The sword cleanly swiping through, and this pile of bones collapses around you as you fall to the floor.
No! Fabian! What are you doing? That was unfortunate.
It was epic. moving on from the question and sort of building upon your answer on your reflection there, you mentioned, that we were in those early episodes trying to feel out the characters. Most of them didn't even have voices at the time. They didn't really have much of a personality either at the start, because we didn't know how deep we were going to dive into the story at that point. But you did mention that, we were growing into them. So how do you feel that Shu has grown and changed over the course of the campaign?
Well, I think I didn't really have an idea of what his character was going to be like, and I was just like playing off the world really and what you set in front of me. I think like Shu went through a few changes, obviously when he cut his hair and he had that moment after Don Jong was killed and he blamed himself for it. So I think he matured somewhat, even though he still had that kind of childish relationship with Fabian and still was very set on his ways. I think he matured quite a bit, and for example, he stopped doing those like stupid pranks like getting into a dead horse and stuff like that. So and I don't know, I even felt it in his voice. It kept getting deeper, but still high, the oh yeah, but more kind of firm, more like commanding. I felt during the end episodes when we were getting closer and closer to the final fight. Having said that, he still messed around in Axholm and messed around. I mean, he tried a plan that perhaps wasn't the best idea, and he also tried that plan at the bottom of the Icespire hold, where the cultists were, and he turned into the owl, and things didn't always turn out like he wanted to, but I think he did grow more mature as the days went by, the weeks went by.
Yeah, I think he became more of a leader and more the namesake of Shu Shrubberies. He really grew into that role, and there were moments, when he was hailed as El Guillo Masferada, and he was getting all those chains and accolades. There were moments where perhaps Fabian was right and he wasn't going to be able to fit into the next cavern or the next hall. But it came with the success, of course, of Shu Shrubberies and the adventures that they were completing. But as you say, Shu started to think a bit more and plan a bit more and take responsibility for coming up with a course of action, even if perhaps it didn't always go to plan.
And even though I fought with the NPCs, you were the voices and the characters behind Fabian, Fena, Murkob and all others. At least in terms of Fena and Fabian. Maybe Murkob as well, although he was with us for a shorter amount of time. How do you feel that those characters progressed and grew?
I'll go through them in order of appearance, make it a bit easier for my thought process. With Fena in particular, I mean, she didn't even have a voice to begin with. I wasn't sure if she was going to stick around as part of the campaign at large. I thought maybe she'd just accompany you to Adabras and then to Nomengard, and then who knows, but then, Shrew managed to convince her to join him on his quest to rid the region of the dragon of Icespire Peak. So, I mean, I think she was always quite softly spoken, and certainly once Fabian joined the party and, the camaraderie and the tomfoolery between Fabian and Shrew, particularly at the beginning, she started to develop into the voice of reason, almost like a reluctant mother figure, trying to deal with two naughty little boys who are constantly at each other's throats in a friendly sense. And, in terms of a character as well, as we moved away from the system that the Dragon of Icespire Peak provides for the companions, and we sort of beefed her up a bit with some spells, she started to get to a point where she could hold her own as well in a fight, and she became more confident, more sure of her own abilities as well, not just as a healer, but that she could contribute to the battles at large as well.
Shut the fuck up, bitch!
As she shouts it out, her hands start shaking and quivering. She's breathing heavier and heavier. She holds a spell longer than she normally would. This banshee gets hit straight in the center of her forehead. It gets enveloped by this radiant light which consumes her, lets out an explosion out of this pure rage that Fena has conjured from the weave, crumbling the arrow slit from which she was poking her head from, which comes crashing down with a roar. The banshee is no more. So I think she really grew in that sense, in confidence and belief. Fabian, I don't think he grew much throughout the the length of the campaign. But there were moments, I think towards the end of the campaign in particular, he kept sort of highlighting a concern that True Shrubberies didn't seem to have what he felt was a clear plan as to how they were going to fight this dragon. And he did start to cut through a little bit more slack with when plans went wrong and stuff. They would still sort of, to and fro with little jabs and friendly quips, but it wasn't as argumentative perhaps as they were at the beginning, where they were blaming each other all the time for things that were going wrong or for mishaps or teasing each other. It became more of a close relationship, I think, between Shrew and Fabian.
I'd say that Fabian is probably the one that grew the most.
Oh yeah, the end. I know where you're going with this, but yeah, please continue.
Yeah, like from the very beginning, he hated orcs.
Yeah, his scar on his cheek was actually from an orc javelin.
And he had set out to kill a few. And then by the end of it, he actually admitted not all orcs are that bad. So yeah, massive growth there.
Yeah, Murkob had a big part to play in that. And now that we've mentioned Murkob was one of those examples where he was literally a character in passing. Because when you first stumbled across, I think it was Murkob Gul, I think was the other one. Or Kul. And...
yeah, cool.
I can't remember it wasn't Sheila, but it sounded something like Sheila. The other orc, their chief or their most senior ranking orc that survived the dragon onslaught that you witnessed. I thought when you saw that dragon attack, you were just going to run for the mine and seek safety. I didn't think you were actually going to try and look for the orc survivors. And, Murkob was literally a product of your choices as a character, not just in stumbling across them, because suddenly it was like, oh shit, now I'm going to have to give these guys names and I'm going to have to come up with some sort of, not necessarily purpose as to why they were there, because that was clear because they'd been in a fight with the were-rats in the mine. But then Shrew had this grand plan to unite the orcs and the people of Phandalin and to try and get allies to reclaim Icespire Hold with their assistance. So yeah, Murkob grew a lot as a character in the sense that he was literally not even named originally. He was just a kind of like a showpiece of the actual Dragon's Might, and he became a character in his own right.
We've talked about the characters and their growth, but how do you feel you, Nick, have grown as a DM or as a podcaster during the course of the campaign?
Wow, that's a good question. Certainly as a
You wrote it, so...
Oh, did I? Yeah, we've got a number of question prompts here on screen just in case we get stuck, so that the conversation flows. But yeah, I think both as a podcaster and as a DM, I think I've grown a lot in confidence, and I think it's quite evident when you listen back to those first 10 episodes, where you can almost feel our nerves shaking through the microphones. So yeah, definitely a lot more confidence, a lot more natural, a lot more relaxed, and that comes with the experience as well. I've been doing this now for about 18 months. In terms of podcasting as well, a lot more knowledgeable in audio editing, which again I hope is more than evident in the audio quality between those early episodes and these more recent ones. And as a DM, I'd had arguably a fair bit of experience prior to the campaign. I'd done, groups as large as 6-7 players, including at one point with a player playing remotely with others in person. I'd done smaller groups of 2 and 3 players, but I've never done a duet like this. This was our first for both of us. And, the pressures are different, because when you've got a full party, you're sort of jumping from character to character, and it's almost like a TV series where there's certain episodes where you follow different characters and other players can sort of temporarily switch off. But when you're playing, as we've been doing, it's been a challenge, but it's been really rewarding, and it's really helped me develop my storytelling skills and my improv skills, because you've got to keep the sole player at your table engaged for the whole length of the game. It's not like, okay, now we're doing Alan's part's over and I'm going to jump over to Bardock, for example, and now Alan can switch off for a bit and I've got to focus on the other character. So in that sense, it's really helped develop those storytelling skills and that ad-lib. And, Alan certainly kept me on my toes throughout the campaign with the odd curveball. Doesn't matter how well you prepare for a session, something unexpected will always happen.
I haven't DM'd yet as a duet, or I haven't DM'd much as anything really, but do you think that part of the challenge of being a DM for a duet is that you cannot pass the storytelling over to the players? If there's a big group, you could at times even be 10, 20 minutes without actually having to run the story whilst the players are interacting in between themselves, which allows you to sit back for a while, gather your thoughts, gather your notes. Whereas here, it's a constant bombardment by the player, me in this case, to you, because there's no one else. So there's no real downtime, no real time for you to say, okay, hold on, where am I? Where is this going? What are they trying to do?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And, building on that analogy that you've used there have been moments, particularly when we used to play those bigger campaigns, where travel time was almost in real time, or, tavern, especially the taverns. Those tavern interactions were literally per verbatim, the actual players, as you say, discussing amongst themselves, strategizing, maybe not even strategizing, just talking about the adventure they've had and really getting into their characters. And that could have easily been 20, 30 minutes of the players doing their own thing, which, as you say, gave you a bit of downtime to, they've said this, I'm going to try and work this into this hook, or crap, they didn't go in the direction I thought they were going to do, but conveniently they've stopped at a tavern for something to eat and spend the night. So now I know they've got 20, 30 minutes whilst they talk to themselves, and I can sort of regather my thoughts, look at my notes, and prepare. So yeah, that's definitely a big change from running a duet, because as you say, not just a bombardment from a sole player, but because there's no other players and I'm role-playing the NPCs, I'm constantly engaged in role-playing as well, which is great fun. But at the same time, I've got to be careful that as I'm doing that and thinking about what I need to tweak or what I need to plan or I need to think on things, I've also got to be careful that in those role-play interactions, I'm not leading Alan as the player down a path that perhaps he doesn't want to go down, or that he hasn't thought about, or that maybe he thinks that I think he wants to do. So it is quite tiring, but it is incredibly fun as well, because there's the positives and the negatives. You don't have that time for downtime, but at the same time you don't have any downtime, so you're constantly, as a DM, fully engaged, fully immersed in what's going on around you. What about you then? How do you feel you've grown as a player and as a podcaster over the course of this campaign?
As a player, probably my biggest kind of progression has been in the rules and stuff, and knowing how things work a bit better, because we're playing almost every week at this point. Also the roleplay, we've always roleplayed really in our private games, and we've always full-blown roleplayed. Voices, the acting, everything. I don't think that part has improved too much. Not that I'm the best role player or anything, I'm just saying for my standard, I haven't improved. I imagine I have, because at the end of the day, after doing it for 2 years, I might not notice, but there must be some improvement there. But for my standard, I don't think I've improved that much more. What I would say is that I have improved role-playing for the microphones, if you know what I'm saying. If it were a private campaign, what I'm doing now is probably what I was doing 5 years ago. But when we started behind the mics, the nerves, the knowing that people will listen to this and all that kind of held me back a bit. And I think I've grown in that aspect, where I now feel more confident and see it more as a private campaign, but we just happen to be talking into mics. So in that regards, as a player, that's how I think I've grown. As a podcaster, as you said, the editing process, the learning what we need to do to have a good sound, be it here pre-editing or post-editing or during the edit, everything really. It's been a steep learning curve, and I think, as you mentioned before, you can tell from the previous or the first episodes. If you compare episodes 1, 2, 3 and so on to the sound of the last ones, there is a clear, distinct improvement there. We still need to improve more, I imagine, and we will get better as we go on, maybe investing in better equipment as we go on as well, but there has been an improvement, and it's very, very apparent. Also, all the other stuff that no one sees or hears, the behind-the-scenes stuff, the Twitter engagement, advertising we need to do, it's a lot of work for two of us, That's probably one of the downsides of duetting, and maybe we can talk about this now. One of the downsides of a duet for me would be a duet as a podcast would be that it's only two of us and we take the brunt of the work. There's no one else.
Well, all of it.
All of it. All 100% of it shared in between two of us only. There's no one else that is helping out in anything. And it doesn't have to be like that, because I mean, at the end of the day, you can be a duet and you have a team behind you, right? But if you're starting as a indie like we are, like with no experience, chances are you're going to start two of you only. And that's got to be the hardest thing. Keeping up with everything, the editing, the ads. And we kind of try to do everything at an exaggerated level. We try to do everything big. And there's a lot of things we've been doing that you guys don't even know about right now. And slowly we'll be revealing. But yeah, it's a lot of work, and that's probably one of the downsides, the only downside for me of running a duet as a podcast.
I think our number one priority, once the big bucks we hope start rolling in, will be to hire an editor.
For sure. That would be heaven sent.
Yeah, because it takes hours, doesn't it? I mean, the way we do it, we record, and perhaps the more recent, maybe the last 20 episodes or so, we've really got our workflows down to a T. So usually what I do is, because we record at my house, I take the audio, I do what I call splicing. I don't know if that's the correct term or not, but that's what I call it. So I go through the entire episode, like scrub through it quickly, cut out any large chunks of, rule checks or where we veer off topic because perhaps one of our favorite sports teams is happening to play a game and we're missing it because we're committed to recording the episode. Cut all that stuff out, and then I sort of chop it into, or splice it into those areas, and, I'll name them. So, Stonehill Inn, Off to Adabra's, Roleplay with Adabra, In Search of Zurtas, The Road to Nomengard, Arrival at Nomengard, Roleplay with the Kings. And that means that once I send the file to Alan, who does the nitty-gritty editing, where he cuts out all the and lip smacks and coughs and dice rolls and all that stuff that he cuts out to make sure the episode is a smooth listening experience. Once that comes back to me for the BGM, it means that in advance I'm already planning, so I know what music I'm going to use for Nomengard, what music I'm going to use for the roleplay with Adabra, what music I'm going to use when Vanilla Gnome comes out on stage, and all that stuff. So, I mean, between us, it's probably something like 6 hours plus of editing for a 45-minute episode.
For sure. Probably more than that. Depends as well. Like if it's a fight-intensive episode, it takes much longer because there's rule checks. Even though I said we know the rules, or I know the rules better, sometimes there's things that you just don't know. You need to look up. And there's contention sometimes where I think it should be maybe one way. You think it should be, at the end of the day, you're a DM, so you decide. But I kind of try and sell my case.
Yeah, and then it means a quick hop onto a forum or onto Twitter to see if Jerry McCawford has clarified a rule.
Yeah.
Or, a lot of strategizing as well, because there's only one player, it's just Alan. So a lot of, well, if I do this or if I do that, or how far away is this? Can you move the map? I'm going to do this. Actually, no, I'm going to retcon, or can I retcon because I've just realized that, Fabian has this ability or that Fenna has this ability, because it's hard enough when you're trying to remember everything for one player character, but you were playing three, really, in some ways.
Yeah.
So all those little edits take a lot of time.
Yeah. But I think they're important, because the last thing I feel you want to do when you're listening to a podcast, and I mean, there's people that just record like that and it works, and perhaps the way they present it, it's not as tiresome. But for me personally, I'd rather just listen to the story, the fight, and get on with it. I don't fancy sitting down and listening to rule checks and conversations between players, There's a place for that, I feel, but for me, I'd rather just have a story presented to you. Keeping it actual play, keeping it improvised and not scripted, but still neatly presented.
So jumping back to the campaign itself and the story we told, you met what I hope are some memorable NPCs along the way. Who would you say was your favorite NPC? And I think I know who you're going to say is your most disliked NPC, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Okay. By NPC, you don't mean enemies, you mean people that kind of were allies?
Well, people you interacted, be it in towns, on your quests, in your travels. Can even be a bad guy as well if you want to do that, because you did have interactions with most of them.
Again, there's a lot of them, right? So, got Falcon. Falcon proved to be worth his weight in salt. You've got Big Al, also a favourite. Obviously, Fena, Fabian, Mudgub, Sister Garel. There's a lot of them. But one of my favourites was William. The Ox.
William the Ox.
Yeah, I like that guy. He was a...
He almost didn't make it. You had to revive him a few times.
Yeah, that's true. But he was a noble spirit. And when it mattered, when we were getting closer to Phandalin at the end, he rolled those natural 20s and just kept charging on like a true warrior.
Yeah, when you guys were exhausted from that fight with the anchorites, when you'd met those traveling shipwrecked elves.
Yeah, but there's a lot, really. I enjoyed Bryn as well, the Thinkerer.
Yeah, she was quite fun to play as well.
There's a lot of them. Dumbledore, Fiddlesticks, the Kings. I mean, there's too many. But yeah, I liked William. I had a soft spot for William. And my least favourite, Don John, obviously.
Oh, Don John. I thought you were going to say Harbin Wester.
Oh, yeah, shit. Yeah. I take that back. Harbin Wester, most definitely. Harbin Wester and his brother. Yeah,
Tybor
sure.
Wester.
Yeah, for sure. Don John was just like, he was all talk. What I thought Falcon was going to be all talk and then no fundament. But Don John, was all talk and then couldn't hit anything. It was pretty much useless, poor guy.
To be fair to him, that was all down to the dice more than anything.
Yeah, but dice dictates, the roleplay at times.
Yeah, 100%.
And for you as a creator of the actual characters and the voice behind them, who did you enjoy playing the most?
Oh, it's tough.
And the least?
That is quite tough. I think the ones I had most fun playing were probably Dazzle and Norbus. And, we'll talk a bit more about them in the actual review and how to run the Dragon of Icespire Peak, because they're literally just in passing. And we really made them a central part of the narrative and the story itself. They were really fun to play, particularly when I decided that they would be, lovers that had fallen out and were sort of tolerating each other at that point and developing their relationship thanks to Shrew. But they were really fun to play, and again, because, as you said very rightfully now, the dice dictate the roleplay. It just so happened to be that every time something happened, even when I wrote the backstory for them, all the mishaps happened to Norbus as I was rolling the dice to figure out what was happening. So it was quite funny to see how their characters developed in that sense. It's
also quite funny how they ended up being like partners, because in the book, as it's written, Dazzling is a female, I believe, right?
That's correct. I didn't name. It's not explained in the book. I just thought they were two partners in business, but I just decided I'm going to make them partners in love. I made the same mistake with the Kings of Nomagar as well.
Yeah. You thought they were twins, right?
Yeah, somewhere along the way when I was researching part of the story, when I was doing the backstories, I came across an article which spoke about the twin kings of Nomagar, and it's like, oh shit, they're twin kings. They're not they're not two kings because they're married.
But it was funny for Norbus and Dazzling. Like, it ended up being a couple that were out of love or had fallen out, kind of. And it was very fitting that the first time I bumped into them, they were bickering behind a wall and they were fighting between each other. So, even at that point, we didn't know, or at least you hadn't thought that they were going to be a couple.
That's correct, yeah.
They kind of played that way from the very beginning.
Yeah, it sort of naturally evolved into that. I really enjoyed playing some of the boss fights as well. Moesco stands out to me. I think that was the first foe that you fought that I really put a lot of character into. I like playing Malicis as well, and Erevan, particularly trying to psych you out, thinking, well, are they friend or foe in these dark and dangerous Neverwinter woods? Zurtas was very fun to play as well. The dragon itself was really fun to play. The kings. In terms of my least favourite character, perhaps, it's a bit harder. Oh, sorry, talking about favourite characters, Zelene I really enjoyed playing, and I think she came across as quite a
bitch.
Yeah. Quite nicely put. But in terms of my least favorite character, the one James played. Nah, I'm just messing James.
Alas, no?
Alas, yeah. Least favorite character. I'm probably going to have to go with the captain of the guard. I thought he was quite boring to play. I mean, he just had a bit part, but I
don't know.
In retrospect, I think I could have given him a bit more character.
I don't know. I quite liked that he was more of a wet sponge kind of character. Like, he was sent there to do what he had to. He wasn't there to make friends. He wasn't there to be an NPC, really. He was there to do his job. And I think that leaned well into that character.
I'm going to give an honourable mention as well to Halia. I really enjoyed playing her. And there's some... You didn't quite uncover all the parts to her story, the way things played out, but there were hints along the way with those items that you did find for her.
Yeah, I was suspicious of her for a long time. But again, it's hard to uncover every little piece of the story.
Yeah, for sure. For those of you who follow the Dragon of Ice, or rather have played the Dragon of Icespire Peak, or perhaps you've played The Lost Mines of Fandelver, you may know that she is an agent of the Zentarim.
Ooh, shit. Don't tell me that now. What do we play?
You've left already. You're well on your way to Leylon or Lylon by now.
Yeah, but who are the Zentarim anyway? The cult?
They're a shady organization.
Okay. Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you're necessarily evil. I mean, she did seem to have the best interests of the town at heart.
She's shady.
I thought at one point you were going to try to stop. Well, you did, didn't you? You wanted to, but you had to use the potion of invisibility elsewhere. I seem to remember in one of the Into the Studio episodes that you'd been reserving it to spy a bit on Halia.
On Halia, yeah. I don't know what happened exactly by then, but yeah, things changed.
What for you then was the most what the fuck moment in the campaign where you thought, what the hell's going on here?
Probably episode 1 when the dragon came swooping down and picked up the bloody cart and almost had us. Really, that was what the hell. I mean, after that I was in a better position to you know what was going on and react to things, but as an introduction to the story, having that happen was a pretty big what the fuck moment. I was gonna say that you, as a DM, you know all the moments, but not really, because for you, what was the biggest what the fuck moment for something I did that you might not have expected?
Oh, there were loads. But I won't go through all of them. I'm just gonna say one, and it was quite early on in the campaign as well. It might have been episode 2, maybe episode 3. Without going into the, you grabbing Harbin's fingers, which was definitely a what the fuck moment really early on. But I remember thinking, what on earth is he doing? When, Shrew and Fenner had slain or sacrificed that deer, and you decided to build these rollers, they think they move the stones in Stonehenge, and you cut down all these tree trunks, and you complicated this thing, and, between the two of you could have just picked up the deer or dragged it off.
What if we we are around woods, so what if we find some logs, perhaps rounded logs, and maybe we can make a sort of, thing where we push the deer on the logs and then, roll it over the logs.
You start doing that, moving at a painfully slow pace as the deer is being rolled over these things, head and neck flopping all over the place, and the hooves, and then you've got to get the log, put it at the front again, readjust the deer back onto the logs.
This might take a while, Benna.
It might do. How about we just try dragging the damn thing?
Okay. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, because I was thinking we had mentioned our stature and that we were very short and
you've been plodding along.
Plodding along, and I thought, two little guys, how are we gonna take this big deer all the way back to Surtas? So I overcomplicated things.
Yeah, and obviously, as we discussed before, the whole getting to the horse thing as well, that was a big what the fuck moment. And the most recent one for me as well, which was I'd very carefully described this totem in the heart of the cultist camp with these magical glowing runes. And then you just said, I'm going to perch myself as Owlshrew on the totem. It's what are you doing? Yep. With that description, what are you doing?
Yep. That happened.
So yeah, moving on, and having spoken about what the fuck moments and favorite NPCs and least favorite NPCs and all that, I think you had quite a few epic fights in this campaign. Which is the fight that you enjoyed playing through the most?
Again, obviously, goes without saying that I enjoyed them all. And each fight had its own epic moments, I think. Maybe not the one I enjoyed the most, but one of the ones I fondly remember is the one in Butterskull Ranch. I think it's because, if I'm not mistaken, well, I think it was the second fight or third fight, because we had visited Norbus and Dazzling by then.
Yeah, that's correct. You fought the Ochre Jellies, then you fought the Orcs. So yeah, it might have been your third fight.
There might have been some wolves around there as well, thrown into the mix before I got there. But I feel it was like the first big fight. And I remember thinking this might not go well. The consequences and the stakes were high in that fight. And I had all these new things I had found. The
immovable rod you put to good use in that fight.
Yeah, the immovable rod, I think it was a wand of pyrotechnics.
Yeah, you're using that as a distraction too.
Yeah, as a decoy, and we kind of fumbled with the rules there a bit where I turned into a frog. I wasn't supposed to because I didn't have a swim speed. I shouldn't have had one. But it was really, I could have turned into a snake and slithered by. It wasn't really much. It wasn't game changing, I wouldn't say. But yeah, I didn't know where Big Al was either, if he was going to survive, if he was going to make it. So I remember it feeling quite tense. And I liked how we kind of closed ourselves in the room and were able to mitigate the numbers by engaging with one orc at a time. So I felt it was quite a good fight and quite strategic at points.
Okay, so Fabian managed to run up the stairs a bit out of breath, a bit shaken. Slams the door shut, the sword ready, glances over, relieved to see that Fen is there, and equally relieved to see you in bear form. Sorry, I'll also mention that after having thrown the javelin, that orc has used his aggressive nature, and he made a dash towards Fabian, so just as he was getting to Fabian, Fabian's managed to run away.
Nice one, Fabian. Also the one where I left these guys behind in the camp and went to try and save the owl bear.
Oh yeah, where you went on your own.
Yeah, there were goblins, I think, or hobgoblins or something, trying to capture an owl bear. And I just destroyed most of them with I think I killed all of them at one point. Maybe some of them got away and ran away. But I diffused the whole fight by myself and then just came back and said, hey, it's all good. I think maybe the owl bear came or something.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it's all good apart from the owl bear morning, Fabian.
Yeah, something like that happened. But I kind of got rid of all the goblins by myself. That felt good. It felt like I was finding power.
The owlbear continues to sprint in a mad rage and also in a bit of a panic, sort of running erratically. So a little time passes, and you suddenly hear, "What the fuck?"
Here we go. Trigger happy Fabian. Kill first, ask questions later.
So while Shrew can't see what's going on, you can see in the distance that the owlbear is rushing towards the faint glow of your campfire. Still some distance away from you. It's going to take you 2 rounds to get there. Fabian's going to step in front of Fenner. "Stay behind me, Fenner!" as he draws his greatsword and holds his action. Yeah, I had quite a few, like you, I really enjoyed all of the fights, I think, to some extent. The ones that really stood out for me, the fight with the spiders where you dropped the axe, or rather you clanged the statue and you're doing the old switcheroo. I quite enjoyed that fight with the giant spiders and then the big mama came out. Yet a sense of foreboding hangs in the air, and suddenly a low rumble grows into a deafening cacophony as the very ground itself seems to convulse. Dust and rubble rains down from the ceiling as the ancient dwarven hall seems to shudder. With a resounding crash, a colossal figure bursts through the doors, sending fragments of masonry flying. This nightmarish apparition, an enormous arachnid monstrosity that towers above our heroes. 8 spindly legs, each as thick as a tree trunk, scraping across the stone floor, producing an eerie and unsettling symphony of clattering. This spider's body is a grotesque fusion of chitin and muscle, its abdomen heaving with an unsettling rhythm. Fangs as sharp as dwarven steel glint malevolently, dripping with a vicious venom that sizzles and hits as it makes contact with the ground.
Oh, you must be joking. The mother is here. Oh, you gotta be shitting me.
The dragon fight for me was really fun, and not just to play the dragon. First time I actually got to play a dragon in a D&D campaign after all these years of playing. But, using the lair effects and sort of feeling out through shrubberies and seeing what Shrew and his companions were going to do. The fight with the Moesco really stood out to me, and the Harpies. But I think in terms of a fight and narrating the scene that was there and the twists and turns that it took, for me the real standout one for me was the battle with Gothok. With the Anchorites trying to summon the boar, realizing that they were under attack. I think one of the Anchorites ended up sacrificing his companion and throwing him on the stone table. We had the added tension with Sister Garel lying down on the stones as a sacrifice as well. So it's now over to Flux. He raises his hands, starts gesticulating wildly. You begin to hear him shouting in Orcish. One word you do recognize though. He shouts out, Gothok.
Oh shit.
Murkob understands this as,
Gothok, hear my call. I summon you, primal spirit of the storm. Come forth and wreak havoc upon our enemies.
and this bolt of lightning slams into the altar.
Oh shit.
You see the stones start to glow again. The clouds above get darker. The light rain starts to fall. You start to hear the wind howling through the stone circle. You see Flux's eyes widening. The sparks of lightning draw from the edges of the standing stones, each one striking the altar at the center. You all see this flash of lightning and hear a deafening roar as a dark shape starts to form amongst an eerie mist. You see that it grows larger and larger as its massive form starts to shake the ground ferociously. You begin to hear these cracks form on the standing stones as one by one they begin to fall away from the center of the stone circle. You hear the crashing of trees around you as several collapse from the blast. So as these stones start collapsing one by one outwards from the center of the stone circle, Fabian manages to jump to the side as it comes crashing beside him, but the one that Shrew had been taking cover behind falls directly on top of him. As the mist begins to clear, you now see before you this ethereal boar, the size of an elephant, with tusks as long as swords and a hide that crackles with electricity. This primal spirit stands on its hind legs as its front hooves come down on the earth, making a thunderous boom as sparks of lightning wisp off its tusks. You see before you what you can safely assume is Gothok, the Thunderboar. And then that almost Lord of the Rings moment where Gandalf arrives with the Riders of Rohin. We had Falcon return to the Circle of Thunder with your good old friend Zanf the Centaur.
Yeah.
The
That was
cavalry
epic.
came in.
Yeah, that was epic. And then those stone things falling on us. Yeah, it was quite a fight, yeah.
Talking about fights and, the end of the campaign, that final showdown with the namesake of this adventure, did you feel that the dragon fight lived up to your expectations after playing D&D for all this time and finally facing off against a dragon? Not only the namesake of the adventure, but of the system itself. Delved into plenty of dungeons over your time as a player, but if I'm not mistaken, the first time you've come face to face with a fully fledged dragon.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. And the first time we killed the dragon. Yes, I would say it did live up to my expectations. Probably a disclaimer here that the dragon I thought was an adult, whilst in the campaign I think it's juvenile.
That's correct. We'll get more into that in the review episode next week.
But a quick caveat there. Personally, and that's maybe now going back to the point we made earlier on how I've grown into a player that I didn't mention, is that when things are not going my way in a battle, I tend to get a bit sour. Probably noticed it. And I've tried to, grow out of that, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a fight. It's not always going to go your way. But I do like when a fight goes my way. It's fun when you're fighting and you feel epic and you feel like the hero. And the last thing you want to do is like miss after every single attack you have, because the AC of a character or of an enemy is way too high, and it just feels impossible, and you're going to have a lot of luck to land a hit. I think for me, it was a good mix of a really threatening foe and a hard foe to kill, but at the same time, a foe that I was able to hit, and a foe that fulfilled the satisfaction of actually killing. You know, it was tough, but not that tough that it became a chore. But it did feel good when I actually downed it. It was satisfying. For me, it did. It did live up to my expectations. And like you said at the very beginning, it was more of, okay, what does he do? What doesn't he do? How can I approach it? And kind of measuring our turns to see what the other was doing. So it felt quite tactical at the very beginning as well. How do you feel that you managed that fight yourself?
I was really anxious when I was preparing for it because, you know, it's a big deal. You're finally getting to fight a dragon as a player, and I'm finally getting to DM one. So I was quite worried that, you know, after 83 episodes or 82 episodes at that time, you know, will this live up to the hype and the build-up and the tension that's been building over the whole campaign? But I really enjoyed it as a fight. I think it worked really well, you know, using things like lair actions and the legendary actions where it would take turns to sort of balance the action economy a little bit, because otherwise it would have been 4 against 1. So by him having those legendary reactions, it sort of helps balance the fight a little bit. And I quite enjoyed that we put elements of role-play into the fight as well itself, with reactions between the players, the dragon calling out to Shrew calling out to the dragon as well, you know, the whole little lamb sort of thing. I think it gave it some character and personality, and it wasn't just roll after roll, fight after fight. There was things going on, you know, be it elemental effects or Shrew trying to come up with a plan, the dragon trying to figure out what was happening, but at the same time trying to play him like an adult white dragon. You know, I don't think it made the cut or the bloopers, but there was a moment where I think it was Murkob had failed the saving throw on the Frightful Presence, Fabian was downed, and Shrew was on the other side of the battlefield. So it was quite difficult to remember that, you know, I've got to play him as the dragon, so the dragon doesn't know that Murkob is frightened and he's not going to be able to attack and all that sort of stuff. He's supposed to be very raw, very instinctive. So it was like, yeah, he's scared, but he can't think strategically and go like, well, I'm going to go after that druid that just shape-shifted a few times, hit me with a fireball, keeps hitting me with lightning. So it was quite fun, and I think it came across quite well, at least as part of the story in the campaign itself. So, you know, we've talked about our favorite fights, our favorite NPCs, least favorite NPCs, our best moments, etc. Looking back, now that we've come to the end of the campaign itself, and I think coming to the natural end of this episode as well, looking back now, do you think there's anything that True would have done differently?
Might be a bit shocking, and maybe now it's because I've been privy to more information as I returned to Fandling. And there's still time. I mean, if we ever play and pick Shrew's Shrubberies to roleplay again, could still go this way. But I would have probably tried to find out a bit more about Harbing Wester, where he's gone, and if it's true that he's being ransomed by goblins. And if it is, I'd probably go and try and rescue him.
Ooh, after all that, you'd go and try and rescue Harbin Wester.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy Shrew is. But there wasn't enough time. I mean, at the end of the campaign is when I started finding out more information about... Because when I went back to Fandolin for the first time, no one was really telling me that he had been kidnapped. It was more of he's left the town, and obviously
Perhaps they didn't know.
That's what I mean. So it wasn't apparent at that time. So for me, the first conclusion I came to was he's obviously abandoned because he's a scaredy cat, which I still think, to a certain extent, I still think it's a ploy. But I would now probably have moved. If the campaign would have continued, I'd probably now explore that possibility that maybe he has been kidnapped and try and find out a bit more about it. In a way, it's not something I would have done differently because it's really we run out of campaign time, but it's probably something that he would do going forwards, rather. because I don't think I'd do anything differently with Shrew. I mean, it's what it is. I mean, it's what it is. It's like life at the end of the day, right? You can always think back and say, if I had known this, if I had known that, I'd probably done this, I'd probably had done that. But the reality is that you didn't know that, and that's why you didn't do it. You didn't have that experience, you hadn't lived that experience, and I think that reflects nicely onto a campaign like this, where it's all roleplay and it's all spur of the moment. You react to the information you have at the time in hand, and you do what you can, and you do the best you can. And there's no point in looking back in regret.
Good answer. And you've kind of answered my last question, which was one for the fans, and the last one that I wanted to ask before we signed off. But I'm going to put it to you, see if you can commit to this for our good old listeners. Do you think we'll see Shrew and his shrubberies again on the podcast?
Well, that very much depends on the listeners. If they want Shrew and his shrubberies again on the podcast, let us know. I mean, we have comment section everywhere. We have Twitter, we have Discord. Let us know. If you want to hear this again, these adventurers adventuring again, we would love to. I mean, me personally, at least, I'd love to explore the other campaigns beyond the Dragon of Icespire Peak. But we do this for you guys, so let us know what you think.
You know what to do if you want to hear more of Shrew Shrubberies in the future, because we do have a couple of campaigns coming up that we're already preparing for. One being Lone Wolf, which we'll talk a bit more about very, very shortly in a future episode. And then Owl will take the hot seat as the DM for a campaign where I'll be playing as a player. But yes, if you want to see Shrew Shrubberies, you've heard it here from the man, the legend, the halfling that hails from the Mere of Dead Men himself. You want to hear more of Shrew Shrubberies? You gotta let us know. Show Shrew, Fenner, Fabian and Murkub a little love on social media. And who knows, perhaps I'll be coming back into your ears one day in the future.
I heard into your rears.
Well, I think that's enough on this reflection. We really hope you've enjoyed reminiscing with us as we look back over our maiden campaign on the Dragon of Icespire Peak. Don't forget to tune in next week when we actually talk about the campaign itself from more of an angle of a review and how to run it, you know, what we changed, what we would have changed now looking back, whether we'd recommend the adventure itself or not. That's coming to your podcast players of choice next week, so make sure you tune in. We really hope to see you next week as we delve
into the dungeon.